Buckingham Palace has done it again. A fortress of tradition, secrets, and unspoken rules, the monarchy has quietly reminded the world who really holds the power. But this time, the drama didn't stay behind palace walls. It exploded in an email inbox. Earlier this week, Buckingham Palace confirmed the death of Catherine, the Duchess of Kent, the oldest member of the royal family. She passed away peacefully at Kensington Palace, leaving behind decades of service, quiet dignity, and a reputation for compassion. A life that demanded respect, not headlines. And yet, what should have been a solemn moment of mourning for the royal family quickly became something else entirely, because one man, Prince Harry, reportedly turned grief into a full-blown spectacle. Picture this: you send a heartfelt condolence email, pouring your emotions into every word, and you get nothing. No reply. Not even a tiny acknowledgement. Most of us would just shrug it off, maybe feel awkward, maybe hurt. But for Prince Harry, insiders say, that silence ignited a meltdown, a royal tantrum that rivals any scandal you've seen on Netflix. Tonight, we're unpacking every twist and turn of this story. From quiet dignity to explosive drama, from emails left unanswered to social media chaos, we're diving into how the Duchess of Kent's passing became yet another chapter in what critics are now calling the Sussex Circus. Buckle up, this isn't just royal news. It's a masterclass in ego, entitlement, and the price of turning personal grief into public theater. Buckingham Palace confirmed the Duchess's death with a standard statement, as tradition demands.
Buckingham Palace announced today that the oldest member of the royal family had passed away. The official notice, as is tradition, was displayed on the railings outside.
The notice was displayed on the railings outside the palace, a quiet, respectful nod to her passing. The Duchess of Kent was not a headline seeker. She was known for decades of charitable work, handing out trophies at events, supporting organizations for the homeless, and always conducting herself with grace and humility. For the public, this announcement was a reminder of a royal who truly embodied service without seeking attention. But behind the polished walls of the palace, one royal reportedly struggled to separate grief from personal ego. Prince Harry, having already distanced himself from the British monarchy, reportedly saw this quiet moment as another opportunity for validation. The man who left Britain, who stepped away from royal duty, suddenly seemed desperate for acknowledgement from a very institution he had abandoned. Sources claim he sent a heartfelt condolence email to the Duke of Kent, the Duchess's son, expecting a prompt and warm reply. But what happened next changed everything. The Duke of Kent, a man steeped in decades of tradition and restraint, did what the royal family has always done. He remained silent. For Prince Harry, silence isn't just silence. It's a loaded message, a cryptic signal that somehow speaks directly to him. And in this particular case, insiders say it was nothing short of the ultimate slap in the face. Picture it, a royal who has spent decades navigating the pressures of protocol, tradition, and the unspoken rules of monarchy, suddenly confronted by the absence of acknowledgement from someone who doesn't operate on instant gratification. The Duke of Kent, a man whose life has been defined by service, discretion, and quiet dignity, wasn't about to bend to the whims of a celebrity-obsessed grandson. He wasn't going to perform for the cameras, he wasn't about to issue a press-friendly acknowledgement, and he certainly wasn't about to cater to Harry's desperate need for validation. In the world of the British aristocracy, silence isn't coldness, it's respect. But for Harry, trained to see attention as a form of love, that silence might as well have been a personal insult. The irony here is almost painfully theatrical. The late Duchess of Kent, remembered by those who knew her as a paragon of quiet strength and unwavering empathy, dedicated decades of her life to embodying dignity, humility, and grace. She did not need to be photographed handing out awards or caught on camera for a staged charitable gesture. Her influence was subtle, her impact profound, and her legacy untouched by scandal or spectacle. Yet here we have her grandson, who, according to sources, reportedly spiraled into a frenzy when his carefully worded condolence email went unanswered. What should have been a quiet, respectful acknowledgement of loss became, in Harry's eyes, a deeply personal affront, and insiders suggest he turned a solemn moment of mourning into a full-blown crisis of ego. It's almost Shakespearean in its absurdity. You have the Duke of Kent, the embodiment of tradition, holding steadfast to his principles of discretion, mourning a beloved family member with the decorum expected of someone in his position. And then there's Harry, a man who, despite stepping away from royal duties and claiming to seek freedom from the institution's constraints, seems incapable of separating his personal desires from the emotional gravity of others. According to sources, he reportedly raged like a teenager left on read, obsessively checking his inbox, replaying imagined slights in his mind, and growing increasingly convinced that the absence of a reply was a deliberate act of cruelty. The contrast couldn't be starker. One generation honoring tradition, the other weaponizing grief for drama. This isn't the first time Harry's inability to handle silence has made waves within royal circles. Insiders say it's a pattern, one that has emerged repeatedly over the years. Moments that should be about shared reflection, empathy, or celebration of others' lives somehow morph into platforms for his own frustrations. The Duchess of Kent, by all accounts, would have understood the power of restraint, the value of quiet influence, and the dignity of letting actions speak louder than words. She didn't need to send press releases, stage public appearances, or demand acknowledgement for her kindness. Her impact was organic, felt by those she touched, rather than broadcast to the world for applause. Meanwhile, Harry, for all his efforts to claim independence from the palace and distance himself from traditional expectations, reportedly allowed himself to be consumed by a sense of personal betrayal. A simple unanswered email, something any ordinary person might shrug off, transformed into a high-stakes drama that overshadowed the mourning process itself. The moment highlights a critical disconnect. Harry's public persona, built on transparency, media engagement, and performative storytelling, often collides with the monarchy's slow, deliberate cadence. For those steeped in royal tradition, mourning is a private affair, punctuated by ceremonial restraint. For Harry, however, mourning seems to require validation, recognition, and above all, an audience. Sources reveal that as the Duke of Kent maintained his quiet composure, Harry's frustration reportedly intensified by the hour. Far from being the prince of the people who understands and embodies public service, he was, in this instance, consumed by the notion that the world, or at least the palace, owed him acknowledgement. The Duke's silence, a simple act rooted in decades of service and adherence to protocol, inadvertently became a mirror reflecting Harry's ongoing struggle with entitlement, validation, and relevance. And as the hours stretched on without any reply, insiders suggest that Harry's internal monologue shifted from confusion to anger, turning what should have been a reflective, respectful period into a spectacle of personal grievance. Observers point out that this contrast is more than generational, it's philosophical. The Duchess of Kent's life was a study in humility, quiet service, and empathy, marked by actions that spoke volumes without fanfare. Harry, by contrast, often seems to interpret any lack of immediate response as a challenge to his standing, a slight that must be rectified with urgency. In this sense, silence is not merely a pause. It's a statement, a reflection of values, and a reminder that influence does not require a megaphone. The Duchess's life proved that, and Harry's reaction underscored how far he has drifted from those principles. And while social media and tabloid culture have amplified every royal misstep in recent years, this incident provides a particularly stark example. The Duke of Kent's restraint, seemingly mundane in the eyes of the public, contrasts sharply with Harry's reported fury, creating a narrative almost too good for gossip columnists to ignore. The monarchy, after all, has always operated on measured gestures and careful communication. A condolence, a funeral, a moment of mourning. These are not stages for ego or performance, yet Harry reportedly turned even the simplest of gestures into fodder for frustration and self-reflection in the public eye. In essence, silence became the loudest statement of all. It communicated, without a single word, that respect, tradition, and personal dignity are not negotiable commodities. It reminded Harry and the public that the monarchy is not a Hollywood set where scripts can be rewritten to suit personal narratives. And in this clash of values, the Duchess's legacy of quiet empathy stands in stark relief against her grandson's penchant for dramatics. For those watching from the outside, the scene is almost painfully relatable, yet scandalously royal. Who among us hasn't felt frustrated when a heartfelt message goes unanswered? But in Harry's case, insiders suggest that the stakes are exponentially higher, the reactions more intense, and the consequences far-reaching. The ripple effect of one unanswered email extends beyond personal ego. It fuels media speculation, social media mockery, and the ever-widening perception of the Sussexes as outsiders perpetually at odds with the institution they once called home. In the end, silence in the royal context is neither neglect nor cruelty. It's a carefully maintained boundary. It's a reminder that some traditions are preserved through restraint, that some legacies are measured not by the noise they generate, but by the lives they touch quietly and consistently. And yet for Harry, that very silence, so emblematic of the Duchess of Kent's lifelong principles, reportedly became the spark for an emotional and very public maelstrom, demonstrating that sometimes in the world of royal drama, absence of words speaks louder than any headline ever could. Now, let's talk about what really fuels the story: the media. Harry's outrage didn't stay behind palace walls for long.
People don't care anymore. Harry has burnt his bridges fully with the British public.
Once news of the unanswered email leaked, tabloids and social media platforms had a feeding frenzy. Headlines screamed about the prince livid over Snub, and Sussex tantrum shocks Britain. For newspapers, this wasn't just a story, it was a goldmine. The prince who lectures the world on privacy suddenly became the face of a global punchline. Social media amplified the drama. Memes mocking Harry's inbox obsession went viral. TikTok clips reenacted him refreshing his email over and over, and Instagram accounts declared him the world's most sensitive royal. Hashtags like #InboxDrama and #SnubSussex were trending, not out of sympathy but pure mockery. Interestingly, the audience's reaction was split. Younger viewers, generally more forgiving of the Sussexes, found comedy gold in Harry's meltdown. Older generations, meanwhile, rolled their eyes, seeing a man who can dish out criticism but cannot handle a little silence. This incident highlights a growing tension between Harry and the values of the monarchy. The Duchess of Kent lived a life defined by quiet service, not by drama or headlines. She was unconventional in her own right, teaching music at a primary school in Hull, not as a royal, but simply as Mrs. Kent. She connected with ordinary people, showing compassion without demanding recognition. Harry, on the other hand, seems to operate on a different philosophy. Where the monarchy prizes discretion, he thrives on disruption. Where the Duchess gave quietly, he demands recognition loudly. This isn't just a personal clash, it's a philosophical one, reflecting the widening gap between royal tradition and the Sussex brand of self-pity. Let's dive deeper into the infamous email. On the surface, it looked thoughtful, even caring. But sources suggest it was less about the Duchess and more about Harry's need to be validated. He allegedly expected a prompt reply from the Duke of Kent and reportedly stewed when none came. It's almost Shakespearean. The man who fled Britain to escape royal scrutiny suddenly seemed desperate for the very validation he once walked away from. The unanswered email became an ego test he couldn't pass. Grief, for him, transformed into performance. Sympathy points, headlines, and social media coverage, these became more important than honoring the Duchess's legacy. This isn't the first time Harry has turned private moments into public spectacles. Every royal event, every private exchange seems to mutate into a saga of Harry versus the institution. Whether it's interviews, podcasts, or Netflix specials, Harry has perfected the art of widening the divide, and every instance reinforces the narrative that the monarchy's youngest generation is more concerned with personal brand than family values. Whispers also circulate about Meghan Markle's influence. Critics argue that together, they've weaponized victimhood into a brand, turning grievances into content. The problem? A brand built on burning bridges eventually runs out of fuel, and the palace isn't exactly forgiving when it comes to repeated public outbursts.
If you open the door, even a tiny crack, these two are going to keep on damaging your reputation.
Amid all the drama, it's crucial to remember why this story matters in the first place. The Duchess of Kent left behind a legacy of humility, compassion, and service. She dedicated her life to causes without seeking applause. She connected with ordinary citizens and children alike, making a real difference in the lives she touched. In stark contrast, Harry's actions overshadowed this legacy. Instead of letting the Duchess's life be celebrated, he turned the spotlight onto himself. Where she demonstrated empathy and quiet influence, he demonstrated ego and impatience. The contrast cannot be more jarring. One left behind a legacy, the other seems intent on leaving behind chaos. And as the headlines continue, as memes flood social media, and as the world debates the actions of the Duke of Sussex, one thing remains clear. History will remember the Duchess of Kent for her quiet dignity, and Prince Harry for his refusal to stay silent, even when silence might have been the most respectful choice of all.